Hello folks, welcome to the canal channel Jose. Today we're going to show you and give you an idea what can cause the check engine light to come on this 91 to 94 Toyota Tercel. And sometimes the light comes on and then we can't find the problem because the car is just operating normally, but it's spending a little bit more fuel than normally. And we're going to show you what sensor can cause this small change in fuel economy. And today we're going to show you what sensor it is and how to verify if this sensor is a problem. And with that said, let's get started. So as we're looking at our engine compartment, we have the battery right here, or intake filter box, and right behind this plastic on the box there's this connector, and that goes into the air temperature sensor. What it does, that's job of that sensor is that all the air that goes inside, once it goes through the filter, that sensor is reading the temperature of the air coming to the engine. So that helps the computer calculate, so that way it can inject more or less fuel depending on the temperature of the air that is coming into the engine. So if this sensor is not working properly, two things can happen: more fuel being used in the engine because it's not reading correctly, or the check engine light might come on because it's not working properly. So if your Tercel don't have this sensor, but the hole is in there and this connector is hanging somewhere in there, you might have a check engine light on. You might want to put that sensor on, and that's going to probably get rid of that check engine light if that's the only problem that is showing. So now we're going to show you how can the sensor cause problems, how to take it off, and how to test it to see if it's working properly. So now what we're going to be doing, this is the sensor. So all it does is that you just pull it off straight out, and there's just a grommet that holds it in there, and it looks like a funnel. So it's pointing and it spreads out. So it's all plastic and there's two wires connected to it. So all it does is that you just push it in and it holds in there, and then you can disconnect it from the connector by pushing on a tab here. So we're going to be disconnecting it and see what happens to the engine when it's running, if it will turn on, what's the effect with this sensor disconnected. So we're going to be disconnecting it so you can see what happens on the dash when that happens. And we're going to see if the engine stays running. So now that we have turned on our engine's just working as normal. So we're going to be disconnected the sensor, and I took my glove off because the connector, you have to press a tab here and then pull back, and now it's disconnected. So the sensor's here. I actually have it right on my hand and it's disconnected. So now we're going to rev up the engine. So engine's working just fine. So we are gonna see what happens on the dash when this is happening. So we're gonna shut our engine down and try to turn it back on with the sensor disconnected and see if it turns on. As you saw, this sensor, that engine turns on and turns off just fine with the sensor disconnected. So the only thing that can happen on this scenario is that the engine or the computer might be reading the wrong reading on the air temperature, because there's no reading if the sensor is bad, and the computer might be adjusting more fuel to the injectors or to the engine because it just wants to be sure that the engine is operating when it shouldn't be injecting that much fuel, but it's just injecting more because there's not an accurate reading. That's why you can use more fuel when one of these sensors is bad. So air temperature is not being read right, there might be more fuel being used in the engines. So now we're gonna be connecting it, and we're gonna disconnect it and show you what happens on the dash when this sensor gets disconnected and the engine is operating. So now we're gonna turn on the engine, and then we're gonna show you that the dash is gonna be just normal. Might be one light, the airbag on, but that's right now is normal for us because we gotta replace some sensor. But we're gonna show you that there's no check engine, and as soon as we go and disconnect that sensor from the airbox, we're gonna see that the check engine light will come on, and then we're gonna plug it on to show you that the check engine will go off right away. So now we're about to disconnect the sensor, and we're gonna show you that the check engine light comes on, and as soon as we plug it back on, it will go off. So as you can see, the engine is operating above 1000 RPMs and it's operating just as normal because it's cold, but the check engine is on. So we're gonna connect that sensor back on and the check engine is gonna go away. So as you can see, the check engine went away. It took a little bit after we connected the sensor back on. It took a couple seconds for the computer to start acknowledging that that sensor came back to work. So now that the sensor is plugged in, the computer is reading correctly, or is reading more accurate on the air temperature, so the engine can work more properly. So now we're gonna show you how to test this sensor when you got a check engine light and nothing is out of the normal, but you got a check engine light on your car, how to test the sensor to tell if that's a problem on this particular car, because it might be a little bit more gas usage, and then you might not even know that that's a problem because it's not going to affect the performance on the horsepower. It's just going to affect the gas consumption of your car. So let's test this sensor now. So to test this air temperature sensor, what we do is we get a multimeter and we're gonna testing for resistance. And there's two connectors right here. So we gonna have to get the reading. Once we get the reading, we're gonna have to match it to the temperature of the environment, the air temperature. If, for example, we are about 62 degrees Fahrenheit, so we'll be using the bottom reading. There's Celsius and Fahrenheit. So using an ohm meter, measure the resistance between the terminals. Resistance refer to the chart above. So we got a resistance on this side and we got a temperature on the lower side. So depending on the temperature, we match the temperature to the reading, and if that reading is being read the same on this to what this graph says to the temperature, and they all match, the sensor is working properly. But if you got 80 degrees and the reading is 40 or 0, that doesn't match the where they cross both of them. So they have to cross right in these lines. If you got 68, should give us about 3, somewhere around 3.35. But if it's giving us a 40, then the 68 is right because you're reading the temperature of the air, but the sensor is not giving you 3, it's giving you 40 or way too low. So the sensor is bad. So it has to match the temperature, touch this line, and then go across and see what the number is. And if that number is to what this sensor is giving us, then it's right. If it's not, then the sensor is bad. So let's test it so you can see. So now to test this sensor, what we're gonna be doing is we grab the sensor and these two prongs that they has in there. We're gonna be putting our multimeter test leads, the red and the black. We're gonna be touching those two test leads, and then the multimeter is gonna give us a ohm reader or a resistance. So that's just like the book is showing us. They have it on the air box. They're putting the two test leads and then they're reading ohms, and then they get a reading. So we have put our multimeter and ohms. We are at 0, and then we put the test lead, one in each leg. So it's at 2.36 ohms. So now we're gonna get that reading and we're gonna go to the book and see what the temperature should be. Around the 60s, 63 Fahrenheit. So we go up and then we find 2.3. So we are within range of the reading. We are just a little bit, they should draw some lines. We probably gonna have to do that so we can match better, but we are close, so we are within range. But if our reading was 60, if our reading was 40 and we are at 68, our reading is right here. It's out even the graph is not near, so that'll be a bad sensor. And if it was at 2 and at 60, our reading will be somewhere right here, and we wouldn't even be close the graph either, so that sensor will be bad. But we are close the graph, so we are actually doing well. Okay folks, so now that we have verified that the sensor is good, or if it was bad and we're going to replace it, This sensor can drive us crazy why the check engine light is on, and we can't find the problem, because these older models, they don't have a OBD2 reader connector, so you can scan it easier like the newer models. So then if we change this sensor, because we did a test and based on the temperature, and then the temperature matches our ohms, and the sensor was bad or it was good, then we put it back on, and then the problem can be something else. But this sensor can be causing the problem. Once you replace this because it was bad, then there might be another problem that is causing the check engine light to go off. But this one, you found out that you needed to replace it, so we put it back on. And well, folks, this test is very easy. You don't have to use any other tools other than a multimeter and resistance or ohms. You got to test the sensor on the two connectors or the two prongs, and then based on the graph of the book, which we're going to leave a picture. Or a close look in the book, so you can get an idea how you can test it based on the temperature of your area. So depending on the temperature of the air and then the reading, if it matches or it is too low or too high, then you can judge if the sensor is bad or it's not bad. Because this sensor is really hard to diagnose with a computer, because this sensor, all it's doing is just reading temperature and it's telling the computer the air temperature, so the computer can do adjustments on the fuel. So if the check engine light comes on, this might be a problem, but you can't find it because it's not showing what's the problem. All it is just a check engine light. So if that's happening and you're getting some fuel consumption more than normal, you want to check the sensor and do an ohm meter test, and then if you find that it's bad, replace it, and hopefully that's a problem. So now you know how to ohm out this sensor and how to read the resistance from the Toyota book. So just a multimeter, test it, it's simple. And hopefully this video was useful, how to test the air temperature sensor on a 91 to 94 Toyota Tercel. For those folks who are watching our video and haven't subscribed to our channel, please subscribe. If you like our video, give us a thumbs up, share it, and we'll see you soon with more videos here en el canal El Chano José.